Hello and welcome to Lit Illuminated. This is a space for us to talk about books, not only how they connect us to ourselves, but to the world around us. I've recently been sharing about this book, The Book of I, that I found at a bookstore. I wasn't actually looking. I was running through the bookstore to quick get something I pre-ordered, and this stood out to me. It was sitting on a indie press display. I think it was because of the cover art. It was green, and I was drawn to it. So I picked it up. I opened the book and I saw the word Columba and I was like, I looked at the back and I saw a Scottish writer. And again, I was like, I opened up the flap to kind of see what it was about. And I just saw Iona and I was like, sold. I closed the book. I walked up to the register. I bought it. I didn't even look any more at it. And typically in these spaces, I tend to waver between, should I buy it? Let me look at reviews. What are people saying about it? It didn't matter to me. It was like about Iona. It was by a Scottish author. I needed to have it. And so some of that is related to my connection to Scotland. I used to live there at one point in my life, which was a transformational part of my life that I continue to think about and write about. And I'm currently writing about that. And so grabbing this book at this time seemed really important. All that said, I loved this book. So we're looking at The Book of I by David Greig, and it's a delightful story. It's set on the island of I, which later eventually became Iona. And we have a raid coming in from the Vikings, killing off most of the monks and other villagers. It was like just total destruction. And it was gruesome. That's part of the story. But then it leaves us in this space of three people still on the island: a monk, a woman who was married to the smith who died in the raid, and one of the leftover Vikings who was actually drunk at the time, and when all the other Vikings left, and they thought he was dead and they buried him. So the three people left on the island, and the story goes through this space of them building a life there, and trying to understand each other, understand the world that's going on. We have the religious aspect from the monastery, but then we also have this real earth-based understanding of life from Una, the Meadwife, as they call her in the book, and then this other, realm of multiple gods and goddesses from the Vikings. So it was this nice mix of religion and the ways of seeing the world and how they are navigating space. But for me, one of the main characters I loved the most was Una. And I'm going to just share, as always, I share some quotes. And so I'm sharing some Una story quotes in here because I just loved her character. Not only she's very strong in this space, she doesn't lose her head in the raids. She has had a hard life, but she's really grounded in self and really connected to the earth. And so this one is on page 81, and the quote is, "It was the loveliest, strangest story she had ever heard, and it was about her." And I feel like that sentence kind of gets us to even this, right? For me, the story was all about Una, and I just loved her in that space. And so we have Martin here. We have others that, are living this life. But for me, it's all about Una. And so I love that she was like, then this story is about her. And at one point, the Vikings come back, and she's come up with this plan of what they can do. And Martin, who is the monk that was left behind, says, "I cannot be involved with witchcraft." And she says, "Not witchcraft, craft." And I was like, that's so brilliant. Like, it's not witchcraft. It's just her being her and knowing what she knows and how she can work with the earth and the herbs and do what they need to do to save the day, essentially. So there's fun moments in here. There's humor, there's love, there's tragedy, there's death, there's magic and the mystical, which is just brilliant. I thought it was just totally brilliant. And then towards the end, there's this one other statement from Una that I think really highlights her role and what's going on in this space. And so they've been saved in some way and they're coming in to try to get them to leave the island. It's all about trying to get them away from the island so that they can get away from all the raids, because they can't stay there because it's constantly being raided. And she's basically like, no, I'm staying here. And they're like, but you, because she has hives, and they're like, you can get bees anywhere. And she's like, not these bees. I need like these ones that are here. This is what I need. And then she said, I makes the brew is I. And this is where the title, the naming of the island, instead of Iona in here, that it's used as the I. And then this moment where she says, I makes the brew is I, is linking so much to Iona and place, but that use of I also is like to her. And so this connection to how she is the land is her, and it's not this, there's no difference. And so of course she can't go anywhere else. She needs to stay on I, no matter what that means, if it means raids or harm to her body, or it means love or loss of love, whatever it means for her. The whole thing is about staying on I. It is about the place. It is about honoring I. And in that, to know that everything that is in her life is rooted and grounded in the island, and it can't be separated. And I just love that so much, this idea of how land and place is so important. We miss that so often in life, that we just kind of move off or we go somewhere else and we're not really paying attention to the land itself, how we're connected to it, how we're rooted to it, how everything around us is connected to it, where our food comes from, where our sustenance comes from, where our water comes from. It's all so rooted in place. So the book itself is short, which I loved as well. It was really a quick read. It was something I would read at least a few chapters every night before I went to bed, and they were short chapters to kind of help with that movement. But I felt like David Greig did this great story arc of raid to stabilize life, to raid to coming back to stabilize life, and this like movement back and forth that continued to happen in that space. And also this uncertainty of life, like having certainty in life, and rebuilding and working on the scriptures and making the mead and working with the cattle and all of that kind of stuff, that's kind of keeping the regular day stuff, but knowing that disaster could come at any time. And that disaster was the risk of losing your life. It wasn't like natural disaster. It was like it was about to get raided and we were all going to get killed and everything we built would be taken away. And the fact that the heart of it was to stay, even if that was the risk, because the land called them. Well, especially Una, the land called them and they needed to stay. Martin stayed for the religious aspect. Una stayed because it was the rooted space for her. And then the Viking stayed because he was left behind. So it's just really interesting that there's like 3 reasons why, the 3 links in there, but then the 3 of them wove a path and a life together that ultimately changed their lives. So it was beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful book. Highly recommend. If you have a chance, pick up the Book of I by David Greig. You will not be disappointed. Thank you for joining me today here on Lit Illuminated.